Guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. Now, let's jump in. I actually had a ton of comics this week with 14 books, and number 14 for me was Harrower, issue 3. I really liked issue 1 of this. I'm a huge slasher fan, so I enjoyed seeing a new slasher franchise come to life, but I feel like it's kind of lost its groove a little bit between issue 2 and 3, or because of issue 2 and 3. I feel like it's focusing a lot on the Act 3 side of a slasher series because there's just not enough room to kind of build up those characters and build up that mythology. I was expecting a lot more knowledge about this world, about this town, about this slasher, and I feel like we get sprinkles of it, but mostly it's just the action, and I wish there was more room to kind of tell the story more. And I like the coloring for it. I like the art style. You know, if you're gonna go gruesome, this is a good art style for it, but I just wanted a little bit more from the series. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is X-Treme X-Men issue 5. This was a 5-issue miniseries. This is the last issue. And I feel like this would have been a stronger series if it just focused on being a sequel to Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. It's very much a focus on Ogun and Kitty Pryde's identity, but with all the other characters and legacy of the X-Treme X-Men series that they're trying to tackle, there just was not enough room in this one. They really try to smack dab so many storylines where I felt kind of unsatisfied by the end because I didn't feel like there's enough room to breathe. And there's times where the facial expressions look really weird in this book, even though I think it's a clean style. It just, there's something unorganic about some of the emotions from the characters here. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, I was actually surprised to see this so low, and that is The Flash, issue 797. It is I hate using the word filler, but it is a filler arc as we get towards the end of Jeremy Adams' run, and getting to see a very completely different run with a darker horror spin for the next book for The Flash. And this one has to do with the kids. This one has to do with, actually I was surprised to see Animal Man's daughter here. We get to see the twins and Wallace team up to fun adventure. That's pretty much what happens. I didn't love that there was a lot of different artists on this one. I loved Akuna's art, but then I went to a different art style, and I'm not saying it was a drastic difference, but I feel like one style was stronger than the other with some of the facial expressions and just feeling a little cleaner. But yeah, the story for me, I'm not a huge fan of, like, the Super Sons. You know, they show up here. If you're a fan of that style of storytelling, you'll like it. It's just a very filler arc in the regard of it's not even connected to the previous stuff. Super Sons is here, so it's not even the current continuity of these characters. It just feels like a lost episode. So if you like these characters, you'll love it. If not, I think it's pretty skippable. So overall, giving that 3 stars. Not a bad issue, just nothing that blew my mind. So that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is She-Hulk issue 12. This is actually, I think, a special issue. It was a little larger. We got a second story in here as well. And honestly, I like the second story more than I like the first. I feel like the first was kind of spinning its wheels. The same thing we saw in the last issue. A little bit of the romance between She-Hulk and Jack of Hearts. We get a little bit from the new villain. And, of course, Jen trying to juggle her job. But nothing really new in that story. And if you're going to give me a slice of life story, I want some oomph from the characters. And I feel like the second part of this issue does that. Joe's artwork is splendid. It really does well with the facial expressions and kind of like the girls' night in style storytelling where we get to see a book club. I just love the interactions between the characters. I love seeing Sue and the kids. I like seeing Jen. I like seeing Janet. I just like seeing all these characters together, and it was funny moments here as well, and I just like the chemistry. And if you're gonna do a slice of life story, like I think what the first part is trying to do, the second one I think achieved it a little bit better. And I think it's a shame that was the secondary story, in the first story just didn't move as much and didn't have as many character moments. But the artwork for both sides are good. I did like the artwork a little bit more on the second one, but I love the artist for the first one as well. I just think there wasn't much to play with in that first one. There's not a lot of action or moments in there to kind of make it grander. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 12, I believe. That was number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Nightwing issue 103. Nightwing, there's parts of here that grabbed me a bit. I didn't love this arc, but I like seeing the girls together and trying to teach the little girl that's now part of this title how to fight, and I thought that was a fun moment. You don't get to see Donna and Wonder Woman and Batgirl and Starfire interact very often, so I thought that was kind of a cool combination. But the actual story with the Titans did not interest me as much. There's an interesting cliffhanger with Nightwing getting powers, but I'm like, where does that come from? Do we need Nightwing to have powers? I don't really know what direction this is going in. And honestly, my biggest critique of this book is I still don't know really what it's chasing for. I feel like this is a filler arc, but I'm like, what are we stalling for? What is the main story of Nightwing? And I feel like that's been kind of lost and muddled as the series has been going on. But the artwork is always great. Even when you have a filler artist, they get the best of the best art styles, and there's some really good moments from facial expressions to action in this issue. Even that final design of superhero or super-powered Nightwing was fun to see. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, topic of our video, the Amazing SpiderMan, and learn a little bit more about Mary Jane and her kid. This is a hard one to rate because I'm not a huge John Romita Jr. fan, but I think this is some of his stronger work here. I think it was dynamic, and I like the lettering especially in this. Another reason I'm torn is that things are happening, but nothing's happening at the same time. There's definitely more movement than we've been getting in the past. At least they're talking about topics that have been important and potentially could progress the plot. But if you look deeper, there's not actually much that's happening in this issue. It's Spider-Man trying to save Mary Jane, and in the end, Mary Jane's like, actually, I have these kids. You've missed a lot. I'm like, all right, this is information we know. We just know we might get closer to the answers of why Mary Jane has these kids. And there's obviously 2 options. She had these kids with Paul because she was stuck there for such a long time and actually created a family that could get fans angry, and we know fans are going to get angry soon because that's been teased about the upcoming issues for Spider-Man. Or it could just be that that's Peter's kids and she was pregnant and they're twins, and she was pregnant when she got there. So there's a lot of different options. I don't know which direction they're going to go with it. It seems like they're promising we're going to get more answers. I do hope that whatever happened with Mary Jane in the Black Cat series kind of gets tied into this as well. How did she get powers? How did she get this jackpot thing going on? Because I really like that in that series and how that was written. So curious to see what happens, but I think this is not a bad issue. I enjoyed reading it. I just don't know if there's much to it. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is, I'm surprised this is lower. Batman Superman World's Finest, issue 14. I mean, the artwork is splendid. It's Dan Mora. How can you go wrong? But it's a little bit of a slower arc. It's revealing the little pieces of, okay, what's going on with these millionaires, people you know, like Green Arrow and Ted Kord, and how is Batman connected to it? And you get small answers to that through exposition, but there wasn't as many shining character moments in this compared to some of the previous issues. And I don't know if I'm as dedicated to this storyline as previous storylines as well, but we'll see where it ends up going. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is another book I'm a little conflicted on. Superboy, The Man of Tomorrow, issue 1. When I opened this up, I was pleasantly surprised by this book, because this is a round robin book. Round robins are written way before whatever's been going on with Dawn of DC, so they're going to be very self-contained, and that's what I expected. But with this issue, it's actually not that self-contained. It actually ties into what's been going on in Superman, and I'm like, cool, we might get a really cool Connor story that impacts the character. Sometimes with these miniseries too, it's just like, we want a Connor story, but you got to put him back in the box, so we can't actually really do anything with Connor. But I like this. I like the character drivenness of it. I like that he didn't know where he was placed because he has been displaced for such a long time. John has a different role. Kara has a different role. Superman has a role. Where does he lie here? And then right as we get to the halfway point of the issue, we go to space, and I think it just gets really prolonged and stretched out. I'm like, oh, so this is the direction they're going. He's going literally away from home. And I'm like, I'm not a huge sci-fi fan. I don't love space stories that much, and that other half just kind of bored me a little bit. So I'd like the first half more. We'll see where it ends up going. Definitely gave me enough to want to pick up issue 2. I like this character a lot. I thought the pencils were really strong. The coloring was a little darker than you would expect for a Superboy story, and something that is kind of a colorful storyline. It's not, that dark and depressing, but I thought the coloring was a little off for this one. So overall, I gave it 3.5. I think there's a lot to enjoy here, a lot of potential. I just didn't really know if I liked the direction they ended up taking with it. So giving that number 7? Yes, that was number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Rogue Sun, issue 12. And this one definitely moves the plot along a bit. A certain character dies here, and you're like, oh man, how's this going to impact our Flash Thompson type character? Because that's the guy he bullied. That was Peter Parker in a lot of ways. And you're like, oh, is he going to stay dead? What does this mean as our hero? Is he going to try to use his responsibility better? There's so much Spider-Man-esque-ness to this book that I love as a Spider-Man fan. The thing that I thought brought it a little bit down is that there's a lot to follow mythology-wise. It's like, all right, there's that guy, there's the other Rogue Sun guy, there's this guy. There's a lot of moving parts that I'm not as interested in. I don't love, I like mythology, but it's not always the thing that I enjoy the most about storytelling, and I do think it gets a little bogged down here. But when you really hit the character moments, that's what I enjoy the most here, and I think it did a really good job. And I like just the fish out of waterness of it all, where you get to see him have to go to his school and still deal with the Rogue Sun stuff. So I like the identity playing as well here. And the artwork's good. There's a lot of good, especially with the mythology side of stuff. There is some really cool armor, I guess you'll call it, that you get to see here in good action. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Batgirls issue 17. I am so disappointed that this book is ending, because I really feel like it finally found its footing, and now we're getting it, we're getting it canceled now. But I like this issue. I don't know if it's as strong as the previous story arc, but I like that they're just focusing on Cassandra and Steph. I really think the reason why the first half of this book was a little bit of a rockier start was because there was just so much they were trying to focus on. You had the future state stuff. You had Barbara, who was also a character. Now it's really just about Stephanie and Cassandra, and they really shine here. And I like the ending. I like seeing that someone's trying to go up against the Batgirls and try to kill them. And you're like, why? And there's still some really interesting tidbits that were pulled out of from that previous arc where Steph had pretty much died, and she's kind of dealing with that as well. So overall, solid issue. I like Robbie Rodriguez's art here as well. Gives you a kind of Spider-Gwen vibe, and I think it really works for this style of storytelling. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Superman, issue 3. And Superman, I didn't know how to feel about the beginning. There was a lot of the parasite stuff, and I'm like, all right, just action about parasites. I don't know if I care about that as much. But it all leads into a really interesting direction of Superman having to trust Lex Luthor, him talking to Lois about it. There's some good character moments here, again, especially between Lex and Superman. The artwork is splendid if you're going to have a big action issue. This is some of the best artwork on stands. I really love the style. And I just love the kind of the nostalgia-ness of it. It kind of has a World's Finest feel where it feels modern, but also is taking so much from the Silver Age that it feels nostalgic all at the same time. And I think that's a hard balance that both World's Finest and this book has been able to tackle. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, issue 107. This book knows how to move. This book knows how to do character beats while you're giving a lot of action. And that's what happens here. We're going to see Lord Zed fighting against Rita and the Power Rangers kind of being in the mix of this all while Matt is also being controlled to be this bigger Green Ranger. But there's a lot of interpersonal relationship stuff going on as well. You got Tommy and Jason talking. You got Trini and Zach having some drama because Trini was with Jason and didn't tell Zach. So there's a lot of great interpersonal moments like that really work for this issue, all while you kind of have this anime style artwork and action, and again, there's all of those character moments are weighted within the action, which is the best type of action issues. And then in the end, you get to see the character from the previous Power Rangers run, not Mighty Morphin, the Power Rangers run, Lord Draken, and you're like, oh my god, he's returned. Not that he returns a lot at this point, but Kaya being in there, you're obviously going to get a lot from the ending of Ryan Parrott's run. You're like, okay, what are they going to bring to the table? So this is getting really interesting. So again, good movement, good cliffhangers, good issue. Overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Hellcat, issue 2. I love this series. I just think it's such a slam dunk. If you enjoy Hellcat, I think you're going to love this book, because it really takes from every side of Patsy's life. It embraces the comic strip side of stuff, embraces her death, embraces a little bit of the Iron Man stuff as well, especially because it's the same writer. And really, it's a book about self-identity. It's about, how about if you wake up one day and realize you're the bad guy, and you're supposed to be this hero, and you kind of see the darker cracks, and in all your life you've been blaming other people, especially Patsy. She's like, oh, my mom sucks, my best friend Hetty sucks, and then she's like starting to realize that maybe I'm the bad guy, all in the mix of her trying to figure out if she killed her ex-boyfriend because she doesn't remember. And it's a murder mystery. It's a character-driven self-reflection. It's just such a wonderful series. I think my only nitpick is that sometimes the artwork could be a little bit more detailed, especially some of those action moments where Hellcat's like jumping across rooftops. I think could be a little bit stronger. But overall, I love this book. I think this is one of Marvel's best books on stands, and this is how you do a miniseries. This is how you progress a character, and it almost feels like an indie book, which I really, really enjoy. You could just tell the writer and the artist's voices here, which is, I think, very special with superhero books when you can do that. So giving that one 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1. Obviously, it's almost my pick of the week every month, and that is Punisher issue 11. It is the penultimate issue of Punisher, and man, oh man, this book does not disappoint. And honestly, Hellcat and this was very side by side, and this kind of got edged off because of the art. The art style for both present and past is just splendid for this book, and really works. But what I like about this issue, and honestly this whole entire arc / run, has been, this is not just a story about Punisher. It's not about just Punisher losing himself to war, even though you always thought he lost himself to revenge. It's Maria's story. It's the character that has always been silenced who finally gets to speak. And that's what we get to see here, of how she was going to leave Frank before she died, literally right before she dies. And then her being able to take her voice back and say, hey, you died a long time ago. You promised all these things, and you were never going to return. And then you have the audacity to use my name and our children's name for your act of revenge. And it's just a really poetic story, and I think it's I enjoy that we get to see, again, a character that has really never been a character become one, and just see a totally different angle of the Punisher, which is what I like to see from different comic runs in superheroes. Like, this superhero has been telling stories for decades and decades. How can you tell something different and with still keeping in the roots of Punisher? And I think this series does a wonderful job at that. It's still telling us the story of revenge and who Punisher is and how he loves war, but from a literal different point of view. So, love this book. Really, really great penultimate issue. I do not know how they're going to end it. It looks like she might have killed Punisher, so who the hell knows what's going to happen in this next issue, but I am so stoked to find out. So giving that 4.5 stars, that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what was your pick of the week, and last week's viewer pick of the week was Carnage, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.